Okay, so hello everybody. Welcome to the Scale Up Your Public Speaking Skills workshop. I'm Laura Borsch from Base Amsterdam, and I have the pleasure to present to you Margreet Jacobs, the wonderful speaker and host of this session. Margreet is a presentation trainer, speaker coach, and founder of Stage Heroes. Sharing your ideas, thoughts, and beliefs with the world can be being on a stage, virtual or physical, means to put yourself in a vulnerable position. With online and offline training programs, Margreet helps professionals become stage heroes who create and deliver impactful presentations. If you have any questions during this presentation workshop, please put them in the chat box and Margreet is gonna pick them one by one and she will do her best to answer as many as possible. Thank you and enjoy. Margreet?
Thank you, Laura. That's so nice to be introduced. Normally, I'm the one introducing myself, but that was very well done, even with the struggles of not having a camera. It was nice to have you here and to be introduced. And in the meantime, I'm seeing who's joining us, so that's really nice. If you haven't typed a message in the chat, please do introduce yourself. Let me know where you're from, who you are, and if you already have a question, regarding public speaking, since we only have an hour, pop it in there. I have a program set out, but I'm more than happy to deviate from that based on the things that you want and need to know during this session. So let me start by saying that we have an hour together, but 48 hours from now, or at least within the next 48 hours, 90% of everything that I'll tell you will be completely forgotten. Poof, gone. That is, if you allow yourself to do what most people do when watching online presentations, which is multitasking. Meaning having your phone within your eyes reach, having distractions in the room, like, cats or dogs walking through the room, or kids or husbands or wives or friends walking through the living room, people asking for your attention, or even having another screen open with your email, for example. All these distractions will lead to you eventually forgetting at least 90% of everything that I'm going to be telling you in the next hour, which is a shame because you're spending an hour. So let's make the most of it. So let me start by saying that for you to maximize this hour, or, not just this session, but any other session that you'll follow in the coming, today, tomorrow, but even in other conferences, make sure that you minimize your temptation to multitask. That's the first one. And second, make sure that you always have a notepad and a pen, that whenever, you hear something that is relevant, that is interesting, that you can write it down. And when you write it down, don't just copy what I'm saying. Don't just write down exactly verbatim what I'm saying, but immediately think about the practicality of it. So how does it apply to you in your business, in your situation? How are you going to use it in your next presentation? So, for example, if you have a speech, a talk, a presentation coming up in the next, let's say, 4 weeks, keep that in mind with everything that you hear in the coming hours, so that you can apply everything you learn here directly onto that practical situation. And that is how you maximize what you will remember and what you will apply from everything that you learn in this session. And that way it won't be 10%, but it might be 25% or even 50%. And I'll talk to you a little bit about how do you maximize that percentage also within your audience, because at the moment, most of us are doing presentations online. We're doing talks online. But even when you are doing a talk live on site on a real physical stage, there are things that you can use in both situations to maximize what people will remember. Now, I've already been introduced, so I can completely skip that. In the meantime, I'm just going to check really quick. Thank you, Anke. You've also joined. I see Jenny. I see, I hope I pronounced that correct, Ute. Really nice to see you. Thank you all for joining. I'm really excited. If you have any questions, already pop them in there. And if not, I'm going to get started right away. So when you're scaling up a business, it is important to scale up your public speaking skills, because you as a founder or a leader, you become more visible. And public speaking is a great tool to put your company, your business, your people in the spotlight. However, taking the spotlight, sharing your ideas, most people find that either scary, they find it uncomfortable, or they just don't know how to take all of that information, all of that knowledge that they have, and to cramp it into, for example, a 20-minute talk. Now, I'll take you through a few very practical techniques that you can use in order to prepare a presentation or a talk that you're doing for any type of audience, whether that's online or on-site. But obviously, when you are presenting online, there are a few things to hold into account that will be different from doing a presentation on-site. Now, when we think about maximizing the 10%, or even making that 20% or 50% that people will remember 48 hours or long after, there is a very simple a structure that you can remember, and it's called the 3 R's. And I'm going to just write them down. I'm not even sure if you can see it on the screen if I start writing down, but I just love whiteboarding. I love it a lot more than I love using PowerPoint, for example, because I feel it's much more interactive and it's much more engaging. So also see if you can, use a flip chart or an online whiteboard when you do an online presentation. If you would normally maybe go for a traditional slide deck or PowerPoint, see what happens and see what feels different. So the 3 R's, and I'm going to write really big just to make sure that you can actually see it. But now that I'm looking at my screen, yeah, this is it. I got to get a little bit closer. So the 3 R's stand for relate. This is the first one. The things that people remember. Cool. So sorry, I was just distracted by what was happening in the chat. So the first thing is relatable. So people remember what they can relate to, what they understand. And by relatable, it doesn't have to be that something that happened to you will be exactly the same as it happened to me, but there needs to be some sort of an overlap. I need to understand it. And relatable, it can be done on the logical, but it can also be done on the emotional. So if I, for example, tell a story of the moment that my dance career was abrupted in a very abrupt way because I had to have surgery and it was a struggle for me to go through, someone else might relate to that story by thinking of the moment that they didn't get into the university they wanted to get into, or they didn't get the job they wanted to, or another moment in their lives when they wanted something that they couldn't have. So this is where you're relating on an emotional level, not necessarily on a logical level. So that's important to know. Relatable can be done on different ways, but we remember what we can relate to. The second one is reward. And I see that I'm a little bit off screen. So is a reward. So when we feel like if I remember this, there is a reward in it for me, I'm going to be able to use it. That's why I ask you to write down the practicality of things, because when there is a reward for us, when we remember it, we are more likely to remember. It's very, 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 very easy. And then the last one, and this is actually probably one of the most important ones, and that is repeat. People need to be able, and I'm just going to move this out of the way so I can move a little bit more freely. People need to be able to repeat what it is that you share with them. I think we've all had these moments when someone was telling us an amazing story, or they were in a debate with someone, and someone was making really, really solid points. And then you try to tell someone else about it, and you're like, yeah, I know that, he or she had really, really solid points, and I know it really made sense at the time, but I can't really reproduce it. I can't really repeat what that person said. right? So that means that people might remember that they felt like, oh yeah, this is right, this makes sense, but they can't repeat it to someone else, meaning that within that 48 hours, poof, that all will be gone. So make sure that it's easy for people who listen to your story or to your content to repeat it to someone else. And another, and this is also my challenge to any of you, everything that you learn in this hour, see if you can remember it, and if you can listen to it with the intention to repeat it to someone else later. Because when we repeat it to someone else, or when we teach it to someone else, we get to learn it twice, because that is information that goes through my mind and goes through my memory for the second time. And this will also help me really keep that knowledge and make it mine, rather than it to just disappear at some point. So listen with the intent of repeating to someone else. Maybe you already have a person in mind, your partner, your colleague, your neighbor, someone that you feel might also benefit from everything that you're learning here today. And again, this is something that you can do for this session, but you can also apply that to all the other sessions that you still have on your agenda. This is how you maximize the use of your time today and tomorrow. So the 3 R's, it needs to be relatable, there needs to be a reward, and they need to be able to repeat it to other people. Now, before I continue, I would just like to check if there are any questions regarding the 3 R's, just to make sure that everybody gets where I'm going with this. And in the meantime, I'll take a sip of tea. So we have about 30 people in the room. I cannot imagine that there's nobody who has a question about this. All clear? Okay. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Joanna. No, it makes sense. Okay, good. Then we're just going to go and continue to the next part that I want to emphasize. And this is the starting point from preparing when it comes to preparing for a presentation. So often when I ask people, okay, so you have a presentation or a speech or a talk in your calendar, what is the very first thing you do? And an answer that I get often is, okay, I start gathering all the information, everything that I want to share, and then I open my PowerPoint, and then I just start creating slides, and then that's somehow how the presentation evolves. And a lot of people will do that, and I'm just curious, if that's you, please type yes in the comments so that I know that this is also something that you guys do. That is, at this moment, your start. And I will teach you a technique that is actually going to make your presentations a lot more effective. I see, I'm not sure if it's Mishko or Miesko, but I see that's you, and I see Dan. Okay, great. So I hope that after today, this will no longer be the case. After today, you're going to make it so much easier for yourself, and you're going to make your talks and presentations a lot more effective. So the start of your preparation always needs to be, what is your end result? So I already see Alan talk about the takeaway. The takeaway is a part of it, but the takeaway doesn't necessarily have to be the end result. And when we talk about the end result, I talk about 3 things: think, feel, and do. Think, feel, and do. I'm not sure if we have any Dutchies in the room, but that would be gedachte, gevoel, gedrag, the 3 G's. Think, feel, do. So when your presentation's over and someone walks out of the room, or they close their laptop, and there's a reporter with a microphone. Well, I don't have a microphone, I have a pen, but a reporter comes with a microphone and asks a person, what comes out of the presentation? What is your first initial response? What are they going to say? What do they think, feel, and want to do? So let me start by think. So think is about changing how people think. So in this case, I hope that you guys now think that there is a much more effective way of preparing for a presentation than just gathering all the information and start creating a PowerPoint, right? So that's a thought process that I would like to change in you guys. Then there is the feel. Now, the feel is a tricky one, but a very essential one. So if we talk about remembering things, people always remember feelings. Feelings are instilled in us in a much deeper level than just random information. So the formula here is that information plus emotion, or feeling in this case, equals long-term memory. And I always prove this by asking people, if you have your driver's license, and I would ask you to tell me about your driving lesson number 5, you would probably have no idea. You would not remember, unless, you know, that was yesterday, but you probably you won't remember what that was like. However, if I ask you how your driving exam was, even though, you know, in my case, that was almost 20 years ago, I still remember my driving exam. Why? Because I was feeling things. First, I was nervous, and then I was excited when I heard that I had passed, and I almost couldn't believe it. So the feeling is what made me remember that day. The emotion is what made me remember that day or that moment. So we have to make people feel something. Also, because emotions lead to action. So emotion comes from the Latin word immovere, which means to move. Emotion is movement. So if we want people to change behavior, which is the third one, the do, we have to make them feel something first. Now, feeling can be, you know, very basic feeling. It can be, I want to make people feel happy, or I want people to feel, you know, frustrated or even scared. You know, a lot of politicians, they have a mission to make people feel scared because, you know, scared people are easy to control. And when someone's scared, they're bound to take action because of it, because it's an emotion that people want to avoid at all costs. But it can also be if you're doing a presentation for your board, for example, and you need to make sure that something gets implemented, you could make them feel a sense of urgency. Or if you're looking for funding, you could instill the feeling of, you know, the fear of missing out. Oh, I don't want to miss out on this. We have to, you know, we have to take this. Why? I don't know why, but I feel like we have to hold on to this. So what is the feeling you want to instill? And then the last one is the behavior, and that is your eventual goal. So your behavior could be, in case of investors, you know, we want people to invest, to give us budget, or we want to get people to vote, or we want people to change their behavior. We want people to recycle, or we want people to buy our product. You know, in the end, the behavior is the end goal. So think, feel, do. That is the first question you need to answer before even putting anything on paper. When it comes to content, you need to know what you want them to think, feel, and do. Now, an important element to hold into account when you think about the think, feel, do is what is in it for them. Your talk, your presentation, your speech is never for you. It's not for your company. It's not for the organization. I'm not standing here for me. I'm not standing here for base. I'm standing here for you, because I have this vision. You know, I have this belief that everyone has an inner stage hero. Everybody has what it takes to be a hero. The reason my company is called Stage Heroes is because being a hero is about having a gift and deciding to use it for good, for the benefit of others, even though that's scary or that makes you feel unsafe or vulnerable. You're going to do it for the sake of the people. So you have something inside of you and it needs to come out. So that is what your goal needs to be based on. What is in it for them? Why should they care? So in my case, I start by saying, you know, they'll multitask, not for me, because I don't care if you remember 5% or 10% or 60% after this hour, but for you, because when you do that, you're going to take away more and you're going to apply that and you're going to grow your business because of it. So you always have to answer the question, what is in it for them? Why should they care? And if you cannot answer that question, you have another step to take first, which is get to know your audience. You need to get to know your audience. You need to understand what keeps them up at night. What do they care about? What do they find important? What scares them? What makes them happy? You know, you need to understand these things about your audience in order to get them to think, feel, or do something. If I want to make someone feel happy, and I think, oh, what makes me happy is very sweet lemonade, and I start talking about very sweet lemonade, but the person on the other hand turns out to be a diabetic, that's actually not a good messaging. So maybe for me, that would have been a great messaging, but not for my audience. So it's essential that you know who your audience is, because only then you can create a message that will get them to think, feel, and do what you want them to do. That should always be your starting point for any presentation. Now, in the meantime, I'm going to go to the comment section. I'm curious, do we have any questions? I don't see any questions yet. I hope that's because people are typing. How do you want us to feel now? Well, that's a very good question, Pamela. Thank you for asking that. What I hope that you guys feel is empowered. I hope that you feel that delivering a great presentation is not just a matter of, being a born good public speaker, because sometimes that's what we think, right? Oh, they're born public speakers. I want you to feel like, oh, if I use these tools, I can do that too. I can also influence an audience. I can inspire an audience, and that presenting, it's skills, and skills is something that you can learn. Now, obviously, there's a lot of mindset, and some people are naturally talented, just like some people are better at playing soccer than others. But still, even if you're naturally talented at soccer, you still need to go to practice every day to become a pro football player. And it's the same with public speaking. So the feeling I hope that you guys have after this is to feel empowered that you can do this too. So Joanna asks, even if you know your audience, you might never know how to make them feel. Well, the feeling is always a step towards the doing. So I want you guys to feel empowered, but I also want you guys to start using the tools. I already gave you this little command. There's a whole, I can do a whole training just about doing commands on your audience. And that's how you get them to follow you and believe you. But I told you, write down what you learn and then teach it to someone else, because that's how you get to learn it twice. That's how it really stays inside your memory. So what I want you guys to do is, first of all, start using everything that I'm telling you right now so that your presentations become better. But also I want you guys to spread the word, because this is, for me, this is knowledge that so little people have, but everyone should have, because it is not as complicated as we think it is. So you always determine what you want them to feel based on what you want them to do. How do you get to know your audience if you don't have access to them beforehand? So that's a very good question, because sometimes we get invited into a conference and nobody tells us, who's in the room. At the same time, you will always know certain things, especially in these days. We can just often look up people online who signed up for a conference or who signed up for an event. We can find almost everyone on LinkedIn, and we can see all these things about them that are not just related to work. We can see if they do volunteering or which connections we have in common. There's a lot that you can find out. Often what it takes is just a sample of your audience. If you're speaking to 1,000, obviously you cannot you can't please all 1,000. I have almost 30 people in this room today. I'm sure there are going to be at least 9 of you who feel like, everything that she said, it was fun and all, but it's not for me, and that's okay, because you can't be for everyone. But the majority of the ones that are, that are your audience, that are important to you, those are the ones you want to reach. And there's always a way to find out. Just get your Sherlock Holmes on and start digging until you know at least a few things about the people in your audience. Sometimes just age might already help. Okay, let's go. Now it's going really, really fast. So how do you know your audience now online? So I don't know you, which is why I'm asking you to interact with me and ask me questions. That's how I'm getting to know you as we go. But of course, I also know you're all people who signed up for the base conference, which is about scale ups. So there is, some sort of information that I already have about you. And I know that you probably know Lana and Veronica, or either one. So there's a connection there, and I can make a few assumptions based on that. How do you get to know? Okay, sorry. Feeling that we can give a good presentation is therefore our reward. Yes, it's always your reward. It's always your reward. The reward that you're giving as a speaker is always for your audience. It's never for you. Sometimes people come to me. I always do chemistry checks before I work with people. I don't do much one-to-one work, but when I do, I always do a chemistry check, and I ask them, what do you want to accomplish? And as soon as someone says, I just want to be, I just want to be on the stage, it doesn't matter what I speak about, help me become a speaker. Those people are not people I work with. I don't work with people who want to be in there for them. I work with people who want to be in there to share something, to give something to others. Okay. Yeah, Joanna talks about the 10 days, 10 videos challenge. So Joanna's referring to a challenge we did a couple of months ago where I got some of the people in my network to go and work with video, because some people have a little bit of a hurdle. So I challenged them to do 10 videos in 10 days, one video every day, just to get over that hurdle of, being uncomfortable. How do you make your clients take over your power and use it in real life? Yeah, that's a very good question. This is something that you can do by using commands. And commands are really very simple moments where I tell you exactly what to do without you having the feeling that I tell you what to do. So an example could be, okay, so what I'm about to tell you now, this is something that you might want to write down. And then immediately people will go like, okay, I'm going to, what is coming? Or if there's one thing I want you to take away from today, it's this. And immediately those feelers go out, and we immediately are awake, and we want to pay attention to whatever is coming next. So these commands are usually ways to really get people, even when it's not a live connection, but if it's a video viewer connection, to do that. How did you prepare for today's audience? How would you describe us in a few words? That is a great question. So I prepared, so I'll tell you, I can show you a little bit of my setup. And when I do online presentations, I always make sure that I stand up, because that already makes a big difference. I always want to bring energy across, but I always have this next to my screen. So this is just a few small points that I just write them down just to make sure I don't forget. These are the points I want to make. And I prepare in the way where I think about, okay, these are people that are, they're business owners, they're in a startup, they want to go become a scale up, or they are already a scale up, and public speaking is important to them. Otherwise, they wouldn't sign up for a workshop that is titled Scale Up Your Public Speaking Skills. So this is also already something that I know about you. And I also know from experience that a lot of people who want to do more public speaking struggle with the fact that they don't know how to prepare for a presentation. So that's why I asked you guys, okay, this is what I hear often, people gather all the information and then they start making a PowerPoint. Who does the same? And then I asked a few brave souls answered and say, yes, that's me. And that's how I have the confirmation that at least a couple of people in the room feel that. And that's how I have my confirmation to go ahead on that topic. Now, imagine that none of you would have said, oh, yeah, that's me. And a couple of people would have said, no, I already do it very differently. Then I wouldn't even have bothered to step into that, because then, that point would have missed its goal. So by taking this interaction, this is how I get to know you guys a little bit more step by step. You can participate in discussions on social media about the event in advance and get the vibe. Absolutely, Jenny. That is a really great suggestion to get to know your audience. Find the event that you're speaking at and already engage into interactions with people who will be participating. Okay, so I'm checking the time because I was told that I need to check the time myself, which is not my best skill. I'm the type of person you put in a quarter and I just keep on rambling because I have so much to share. Now, and I'm also clumsy. Fun fact about me. But this thing is also a little bit wobbly in my defense. Okay, so another thing that maybe you have already seen on my notes that I want to get into that is gonna help you engage into interaction, because I really believe whether your presentation is online or on site, the interaction is one of the most important things, because when you get interaction, first of all, you get to know more and more of your audience. You know that what you tell them actually has value for them because it comes from things that they tell you rather than what you have, come up in your mind that it is they need. And a technique that works really well for interaction, both offline and online, or online and on site, is the FIQ. So not the FAQ, but the FIQ. And FIQ stands for facts. So first of all, I would say 90% of everything that I'm going to say today is going to be forgotten by you if you are allowing yourself to multitask. That's a fact. The second thing, the I, stands for impact or implication. So if you do that, that means that you have basically wasted 90% of your time today. And as you are all, entrepreneurs, time is money. When you spend your time, you want to spend it well, correct? Now, what is going to happen if you would decide to take away all the multitasking, I was going to look for the word, what is the word I was looking for? I had the word seduction, but it's not. The temptation, that's the word. All that multitasking temptation all around you, distractions saying thank you, that is around you. If you take that away, you're increasing that 10% and you're making that bigger. And maybe you'll end up remembering 25 or 30 or 40%. And then if you decide to, within 48 hours, repeat, remember the 3 R's, relatable, reward, and repeat. If you make sure that you repeat within 48 hours to someone else what you have learned here, then that chance of you remembering maybe 60 or 70% will be there from everything that I'm sharing with you in this hour. And again, you can use that for your other sessions. So that would be the implication. Now, let me ask you a question. We have been on the way a little over 30 minutes. And I'm really asking you to be very honest. We have 28 people in the room. I would like to ask all of you to answer this question. How many of you have been tempted to multitask in the past half hour? And don't be afraid to offend me, because I know that's just how the human brain works. I'll tell a little bit more about that later. How many of you have been tempted to multitask, and how many of you have actually multitasked? So multitasking just means waving to someone who's walking outside, or telling your kid not to stop jumping on the couch, or whatever, multitask, or looking at your email in the last half hour. I'm just curious. I'm just going to wait for a few seconds. In the meantime, I'll take a sip of water. Joanna says, make sure that you repeat what you learned today on social media with hashtag BaseConference 2020 and humanizing business beyond profit. Great marketing, Joanna. Thank you. Guilty. I sent 2 mixed messages real quickly. Virginie says me. Jenny says you caught me. Multitasker here. Tempted and unfortunately did. You guys are really honest. Couple of times, sadly. Yes, I'm afraid I'm guilty. As a VA for Base, I've been multitasking. Okay, Joanna, you're excused. Afraid is yes to both. Multitasking used to be promoted and most have and must have skill at work. Absolutely, yet multitasking is a complete illusion. Especially, I'm actually reading a great book. Let me see if I have it here. If you're interested, let me see if I have the book here. No, I don't have it. It's on my nightstand. It's completely off topic, but it's a book. It's called Hyperfocus. And it's really about how the brain works and why multitasking is, complete bogus. And what we can do is we can multitask small things that don't require brain capacity. So, for example, I can read what is here. And in the meantime, I can take a sip of tea. Those are 2 things I can do at the same time. What I cannot do is manage 2 information streams at the same time. I cannot be on the phone and type an email and have the same attention to both. My attention is going to flip-flop from one to another, but I cannot hold attention on both at the same time. We have only one channel of information stream. However, we have a brain that is capable of much more than just listening to one person talk. So what happens is our brain wants to fill itself with other things to do and other information in order to stay occupied. This is why I remember when I was a kid, when my mother would be on the phone, she would always doodle. She would always, draw things that didn't mean anything. It was just, shapes. But this is how we occupy the brain with something else. But people are perfectly capable of that. It's only when, as soon as we start trying to manage two different information streams, which, for example, is listening to me and sending a text, that's not possible. So we're checking in and out of both tasks. We're actually not multitasking. We may think we are, but we're not. We're just switching tasks very, very quickly. And Milena says, I missed the Q, which is true because I haven't actually explained that one, but it stands for question. So what I did is I just asked you guys a question. And because I started with a fact, 90% of everything I'll say will be forgotten if. The impact or the implication, whatever you want the I to stand for, if you do that, you're actually wasting your time. And then I followed up by asking a question, and you'll be more inclined to actually answer my question because I'm leading in with a fact and an implication. Now let me see. So Virginie, I think you just posted a link to a book. The hyper focus book. Thank you so much for that. I'm not a big fan of Amazon personally, but order it in your local bookshop. Support local entrepreneurs. If you can, and otherwise, of course, you can order it from Amazon if you want. Yes, children coming home from school, client calling, almost an accident happening in my view. Yeah, if that happens, that is definitely something that's going to take your attention, especially when we are presenting online. So if we look at our brains, so our brains are millions of years old, and our brains are programmed for two things: survival and reproduction. Those are the two most important tasks of our brain. And in order for us to survive, let's not talk about reproduction, let's talk about survival. In order for us to survive, our brain needs to be focused on two things: what moves and what has a face. So imagine 1 million years ago, you're somewhere in the savannah, nothing is happening, it's all very peaceful. There's some birds flying over, there's a wind or a mild breeze. You see the trees moving a little bit. Everything is very peaceful and calm. And all of a sudden, from the corner of your eye, you see a pair of eyes looking at you in the bushes. Now imagine that you would be super focused on how beautiful those clouds are. What's going to happen? You die. So our brains are programmed to spot eyes wherever. So wherever we see a face, that's where our attention goes, especially whenever we see a new face, coming somewhere in our line of sight, that's immediately where our focus goes. And the same goes for movement. So I don't know if anybody of you has children, but if you're at home sitting behind your computer and in the right corner of your eye, there's like a piece of Lego flying through the room, that's immediately where your attention goes, because you will be putting attention on what moves, because that thing that moves might come to attack you. That's just how our brain is programmed for survival, which is absolutely normal. So don't punish yourself. Don't forgive yourself for being distracted, but then try and pull your focus back in. Now, when you're the one giving a presentation, if you know that the brain is focused on two things, faces and movement, and you're holding a presentation with a PowerPoint slide that has only pictures that don't move and words that don't move, how long do you think it's going to be before someone's attention is going to move somewhere else? So here's the most important lesson. When you do an online presentation and you use PowerPoint, make sure that there's plenty of movement and variation. And by plenty of movement, I don't mean putting all these crazy videos and arrows that keep on bouncing, because obviously you have bandwidth to hold into account. But make sure that you don't put everything on the slide at the same time. Just bring it in small portions. Whenever you talk about the areas, you bring them into the slide. That helps your audience stay engaged. And also try to see if you can So I'm not using PowerPoint, as you can see, but when you do, try if you can alternate between, stop screen sharing and go back to having a conversation with the other person, and then go back to screen sharing, and then stop screen sharing and go back to having a conversation. And by having a conversation, I mean where the person can actually see you and can see your face. Now, as you can see, my focus as to where I'm looking is very much on the camera. Not obviously I can't see you now, but if we're doing an online presentation where we can see all the faces on the screen, my attention will constantly be shifting between looking into the camera and looking at the people that are on the screen. Now, if I look at my screen now, all I see is myself, which is, I don't know who came up with that, with you being able to see yourself when you do an online presentation, because it's like if you're doing an on-site presentation, you wouldn't have a mirror behind the audience so that you can constantly see yourself and check your hair and see what you're doing. It makes us incredibly self-conscious, and it's just the stupidest thing ever. I think you should just be able to see yourself quickly to see if your frame's correct, and then just shut that off. Because it makes us very self-conscious. So the trick I always give people is, let me see if I have some here. Yeah, I always make sure I have Post-its. So if I'm in a program where it's impossible or very difficult to, close my own screen, for example, in Zoom, you can hide self-view, but I'm not familiar with most platforms, so I don't know how that works in others. I take a Post-it and I just cover my own face. So I'm not tempted to look at my own face. But I'll show you what my setup looks like, and I'll do that by using my phone. So as you can see, my setup here, this is my camera right here, and my screen is right behind it. So there's actually quite some space between my screen and the camera. So when I look into the camera, as you can see, I'm not actually looking, the camera's right in front of my eyes. So instead of being constantly tempted to check my hair and, because that's what we do when we see ourselves, that's also naturally what we do as humans. I'm not distracted by looking at myself, because when you become distracted by looking at yourself, what is going to happen is you're going to start having a conversation with yourself. Oh, my hair looks weird, or, oh, I should have put more lipstick, or, oh, I should have done my makeup better, or I don't know, guys, I should have straightened my tie, or whatever it is that the conversation you're having with yourself. But we just learned there's only one information stream that we can monitor, that we can manage. So if we're having a conversation with ourselves, we're not having a conversation with our audience, which is where we need to be focused on. This is my reminder that I need to switch earplugs because they don't last as long as I would like them to. So when it comes to online presenting, there's a few small tips. First of all, check if you can stand up rather than sit down. And even if you don't have a standing desk like I do, I've seen situations where people just basically take a chair, put it onto their dining table, and put their laptop on that. See what feels different. When you stand, you move more freely. You bring more energy into the room. When you use your hands more happens with your vocal variation, because all the muscles all the way up until your fingertips are connected to your vocal cords. So when you move your hands, we move our voice, which makes it more engaging for people to listen to. And make sure that you look into the camera. But you don't have to look into the camera the whole time. Just like if we're having a one-to-one conversation, it would feel super awkward if I would just be looking at you 100% of the time, right? At some point you go like, that's very creepy. So it's okay to look into the camera and then look at the screen and then look into the camera again. But there are two moments when you really want to look into the camera. One is where you are telling people something really, really important. So if I go again, like, okay, people, if there's one thing I want you to remember from today, it's this. People are not born with public speaking skills. They are taught. And if you want to be a great public speaker, you have to work for it. It's not going to come naturally. This is where I look into the camera. This is important. It's what I want you to take away. The second moment I want you to look into the camera is when you're showcasing your expertise. Thank you, Joanna. I have 15 minutes. Okay, good. So I know that I'm not going past the time. I want you to look into the camera when you're showcasing your own expertise. The moments that you're showing, you're talking about a project or you're talking about your expertise, where people really get to feel like, oh, this guy or this woman, they really know what they're talking about. Those are the moments you want to make sure that you make eye contact, because that's in the end what it is. Looking into the camera is simulating eye contact. You give the other person the feeling that you're looking at them. And then the last thing I want you to remember when you're presenting online is that where you normally would have one conversation with 500 people, you are now having 500 one-to-one conversations. The people on the other side are not aware of the other people in the room because they're sitting in their own living rooms. So they need to get the feeling that they're having a one-to-one conversation with you. So I'm sure that most of you have seen, and I love using this example, the Kimberly Guilfoyle Republican convention speech. And if you haven't seen it, just Google it, because it's very interesting to watch, because because of Corona, all the rooms were empty and it was all broadcasted, and she was speaking as if she was Evita Peron or Martin Luther King. It was very over the top, and she was moving like she was on a stage in front of 5,000 people or 500,000 people, for all I care. And she was raising her voice, and it just it looked so, and it looked and felt so ridiculous and so disconnected, because people are just sitting on their couch with their popcorns watching that. There is not that feeling of that whole audience. So remember, when you're doing an online presentation, you're having 500 one-to-one conversations instead of 1 to 500 conversation. Joanna says, what do you like more, offline presentation or online one? That's a very good question. If you would have asked me 6 months ago, I would have said offline for sure. Nothing beats the energy of an immense crowd. And I still believe that, having the energy of people in the room, you can't fake that with online. Even, now I can't see you, but even if I would be able to see you on video screens, it wouldn't be the same energy as I would get from you if I would see you physically in the room. Let's not, try and make that any different. It's just not. However, what I love is that we have gained so much flexibility with online presenting. I'm in my office. I don't have to leave my office. When this talk is over, I still have a panel discussion to lead after, but I could just get straight back to work, or go grab lunch, or I don't have to travel anywhere. I don't have to take a whole day in order to do a 1-hour talk somewhere. So we have gained so much flexibility. And indeed, Joanna, time is money, definitely, but it's just convenience as well. And you can bring in speakers that live on the other side of the world. Time zones are of course a thing, but and you don't have to spend thousands of euros on tickets and hotels to have people speak at your convention. So that's the first positive about online. And the second is that everything gets recorded. So when you do an online presentation, make sure that you hit record and that you look at it afterwards and see where you can do better next time. How can you learn from looking at yourself? Now, I'm just curious to hear from you guys in the chat if you have ever looked at yourself on video, if you've ever rewatched a video of you doing a presentation. Joanna says, do I really want to see it? Yeah, you do, but I'm sure as well a big part of you doesn't want to. I'm really curious. Clarissa says, I did in a presentation class. Okay, good. Virginie says, yes, and I hate it. Cosmin says, yes, it's a different voice. Absolutely. Your voice sounds very different. It's because when you hear your own voice, you hear it also through all the vibration inside your head that other people don't hear. So it's absolutely different from what you expect. And they keep on popping on my Instagram memories, Jenny. Okay, that's good. That's good to get used to it. Now, for the ones who don't like to do it and who don't do it because of it, please start doing it. And also just embrace the fact that it's uncomfortable at first. Thought it was all animated, but it appears not so much. Or thought I was all animated, but it appears not so much. Good. So that's good to look back, because what happens inside your head doesn't necessarily always reflect back to what actually happens. And the reason I want you to do it, and despite the fact that it feels uncomfortable, is because I'm just gonna guess that, give or take, most of the people in this room here are over 30, and everyone is over 30, and even people in their late 20s. We did not grow up around camera phones. My father had one of these really old cameras, and there's probably maybe an hour of footage of me as a kid somewhere in a videotape somewhere, and that's it. The younger generation now, they are a lot more comfortable with seeing themselves on camera, on video, and that is because they're growing up being comfortable and being acquainted with that side of themselves. They already know who that person is that other people see. The only person that we got acquainted with when we were young was photographs, and photographs are still images. So we just simply don't know that person yet. And then especially when we get something that is different from what we expect, our first reaction is like, oh, I don't like this. And I always compare this with, such a simple comparison. I have a glass of water here, just plain Amsterdam tap water. Now imagine that someone gives me this glass of water and tells me, I love tap water, by the way, but let's imagine someone gives me this glass of water and says, here is a glass of sparkling water for you. And I take a sip. That's tap water. That's my first reaction. Not because there's anything wrong with tap water, but because I'm expecting something different. And that's what it's like with looking at ourselves on videos. We haven't become acquainted with that version of ourselves. So we create an expectation in our head on what we look like, what we sound like, what we move like. And then when we actually look at the real thing, it doesn't add up because it's different from what we expected, and therefore we don't like it. Now, when we do that more often, and by more often, I mean every time you do a presentation, get a recording, and as you're doing presentations online, that is super easy to look at it, even though it's uncomfortable. And to soften the blow, what I always do, also to make sure I see more and I hear more, is I always first watch without sound. So I also see more of the mimic of how I move. And then I watch, and then I listen to only the sound. So I hear more of what I say, where are my ums? Am I speaking too fast? Sometimes I forget to pause, especially when I'm speaking online. Because when you're speaking online, there's no feedback. You don't see anybody nodding. You don't see any light bulbs switching on in people's minds. So it's a lot more complicated to put pauses in the right moments. So then I just listen, and then I combine the two if I still feel like I have time to do that. But this is how you can soften the blow a little bit. And then the last thing I love about online presenting, as you just see, I have my notes here. So, it takes a lot less preparation time, because I can just, of course, I do my think, feel, do. Remember, think, feel, do. I always do that. I always do the what's in it for them. And then I go like, okay, probably they need this, this, and this, and this. And I just write them down. It takes me 10 minutes to prepare. And then we just go live. And we just, hope for the best. And by hope for the best, I mean hoping that we have an audience that is asking questions, that is interactive, which you were. And I want to say thank you for that. Joanna said we would need to have several screens. Do we also need that in order to present online? Or one simple phone, laptop camera will do for the beginners? Absolutely. What you can do if you do Zoom, for example, you can sign in with your laptop and you can sign in with your phone at the same time. In my case, my phone is a much better camera than my laptop. But what you can do is just, you buy a simple selfie stick for €3. You put it in, a vase or a glass or something that stands, or you can buy a tripod if you want. and you just position that right in front of your ordinary laptop screen. And that's all you need in order to create that feeling of, looking into the camera and at the same time being able to see the screen with the faces of the people that you're talking to. So this is a really way to do that, to get your own setup. But also it's about experimenting, just try in your house. What different backgrounds can I use? How is it different when I stand or when I sit, or how I put my camera? Just experiment, and at some point you'll find a setup where you feel like, yeah, this actually really, really works. So it's all about experimenting. And if there's ever a time in history that we embrace experimenting with stuff, it's now, because nobody knows what the hell they're doing in the end. Well, now maybe 6 months after the pandemic or the lockdown started, we start knowing what we're doing. But especially in these first months, nobody knew what they were doing. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just trying it out and seeing what happened. And then that helped me learn about what I prefer when it comes to online presenting. So I see I have 5 more minutes. Thank you, Joanna, for holding me to that. So I would just like to give the floor to one more question to answer in the last 5 minutes. And before, so as we wait for the last question coming up, whoever asks a question first gets their question answered. So if you're first, you're lucky. Another thing that you want to do when you prepare for a presentation is always make sure that you prepare your first sentence and that you prepare your last sentence, especially when you're doing a presentation on site, so on a stage. So the last thing you want to do is walk on stage and then go like, wow, there are so many people here, or say something that doesn't really has an impact. When we do presentations online, it's different because people slowly come in, so we need a little bit of warm-up time. But when you're presenting on site, make sure you nail that first sentence. You have that prepared and memorized. That's something that arrives immediately. So my first sentence was 90% of what I'm going to say in the next hour is going to be forgotten by all of you within 48 hours. Now, after that, I nuanced it. But what I did by starting with that first sentence, everybody goes like, what? That's something you don't expect. So start with something you don't expect, and then make sure that you think about your last sentence. What is that last thing that you want to give? What is your call to action? What do you want to have echo in people's minds long after your presentation's over? Okay, so I said one question, but here we get, okay, so what are the key takeaways, please? How do I manage an interruption like the famous journalist? That interruption, you just embrace it. There's nothing you can do. You can't control kids. You can't shut them on or off. Just embrace them. You're going to look very unsympathetic if you just shove your kid aside. We all got kids and animals, and, we're all working from home or presenting from home. So don't even worry about that. Just embrace it. What do you do when you find yourself midway presentation, suddenly you have a blackout? Very quick, short answer: wiggle your toes, get your body moving. Blackout is a freeze of the brain and often freeze of the body. When you start moving the body, then the brain also starts back up. But whatever you do, don't panic, because your blackout's never the problem. It's your panic that comes because of it that becomes the problem. Now, last question: what are the key takeaways? Everybody can learn how to present. Presenting, public speaking is a skill that you can learn. When you start preparing for your presentation, you always start by what's in it for them. Then you ask yourself, what do I want them to feel, think, and do? And then you start creating your message. And the one thing that you want them to remember, you make sure that it abides by the 3 R's. People can relate to it, there is a reward for them, and people will able to repeat. And leaving you with that, I hope that all of you will repeat everything that you have learned with your neighbor, your friend, your partner, your colleague, or you share it on social media, like Joanna said. Joanna, what were the hashtags again? Base Conference 2020, and what was the other one? Let me see if I can scroll quickly. Hashtag humanizing businesses beyond profit. Thank you guys very much for being here. It was super exciting for me to do this with you guys. We have 30 people, 34. We have more people now than we started with. I hope you guys have a great rest of the BASE conference. Hope to see you on LinkedIn. Feel free to add me, ask me any questions if you have them later. And I hope to see you soon, maybe in the networking or in any of the other sessions.
Bye.